Hello, I'm Roger Sutton. I'm Chief Executive of the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority. I'm here with representatives of some of the key insurers who are going to help us rebuild Christchurch. And we're here today to discuss some of the most commonly raised issues around earthquake insurance. The aim of today is to help you understand the processes so you know how things are going to go from here. So for the introductions, Renee Walker from IAG, John McSweeney is from AMI, Peter Bloy is from Vero, and Chris Ryan is with the Insurance Council. The Insurance Council is the organisation which has got the umbrella organisation that tries representing the interests of all the insurers. Right. So just to kick off with some questions here, tell us about the timeframes. Tell us about the timeframes by which decisions, by which EQC and the insurance companies will make their assessments and start completing their assessments.
Key response to that, Roger, is that the insurers want to resolve claims and pay claims as quickly as possible. We've been very public about saying that the longer there's a delay, the more it costs insurers. So certainly from our point of view, it'll be as quickly as possible. A number of issues there. EQC will have to respond first, and then the insurers will move in, having decided whether in fact the claim is over and above the EQC cover of 100,000.
So if it's over 100,000, well, what's the time frame for you guys at Vero, Peter?
Yeah, well, we've been around and assessed all of our claims after each event, and we're in the process of scoping and costing them. We've done about 80%. Of course, ongoing seismicity, Roger, is another angle. You know, when and where to start the rebuild is partly governed by the ongoing risks in the city, but fortunately with aftershocks dying down, a lot of projects are now going through the pipeline and good numbers are getting underway. But it's, you know, not going to happen overnight, obviously. It's a long project, this.
Assessments at AIG and AMI?
At AMI, we're well advanced with our assessments. We had about 7,000 to do. Most have been done, and we expect they'll be all completed by April of 2012. And most of those customers that haven't yet been assessed know that they've got a time frame for when it's going to happen early next year.
Renee?
We're the same. We completed preliminary assessments for all of our customers. Our priority at the moment is red zone customers, so that we can give them an offer in line with your offers that are going out. We've completed all of our Kaiapoi and our original Christchurch City red zone assessments, and we'll have all of our Brooklands red zone assessments completed by Christmas. So from there we'll concentrate on uninhabitable homes, and then those with elderly residents and young families, and those of greatest need first.
I think people can be quietly optimistic that come the new year, there is going to be significant rebuild beginning. I mean, as you say, the seismic activity settled down a little bit. I think the insurers are ready to go. We're getting a lot easier access to consents, and there is now enough work for us to begin some serious reconstruction. Hopefully by early in the new year, that's when people are going to be able to see the
are you guys looking at starting to kick off some building new houses in the new year? What can you tell us about that?
Well, as you know, we've got our program just being finalised at the moment. So every time we get a new piece of information, it makes it easier for all of us as insurers to get those programs together. We're looking at really getting into it in February. So we're hoping to build 60 new homes a month. We're hoping to get a lot of repairs underway and to start getting action for people, non-EQC claims as well. So things like driveways, paths, pools, getting people's lives back to some sense of normality.
Any other time for when you're going to start doing as gutsy as 60 houses a month?
We haven't got a definitive number that we're going to be doing per month, but certainly we'll be ramping up early in the new year. Now that Christchurch has been divided into various technical categories, we know that we can get underway virtually immediately when the customer is ready for TC1 and TC2. So those are those areas that are going to be getting underway first and most quickly. And we're doing repairs now when we can, and with customers' acceptance, but certainly the rebuilds in the new year.
Peter?
Yeah, we've got around 2,000 projects either started or going through the consent process and underway planning. One of the things that has to happen first, of course, is that where there are differences of view between EQC and us around the amount of damage and the amount to be allocated to each event, that needs to be resolved first. So a large number of projects released, quite a big number underway. But you're quite correct, Roger, by February you're going to see a significant ramp up in building activity. But it's started now, it's on the way.
Bear in mind too, Roger, there's two aspects to it. There's the commercial side and then there's the domestic side. So I think what my colleagues have been touching on is a lot of the domestic side, but with the commercial sector, a very large number of those claims have actually been met. They've been settled by the insurers, and they've been settled in the form of a cheque. And of course that's an issue for everybody in Canterbury, including us as an insurance industry, because our customers are coming to us saying, can we have a cheque for our building, our commercial building? And what they do with that cash is entirely their own decision. But our concern would be that we would like to see Canterbury rebuilt, because if it's not rebuilt, we don't have a building rebuilt so that we can insure it.
Sure.
So that's the other side to that one.
Yeah, just picking up on Chris's point, there's a significant amount of money going out. Vero's paid around $700 million out so far in payments, and that's a crunchy amount of money.
$700 million out of what total?
About $3.5 billion, somewhere.
So you paid out about a fifth so far of what you think you can.
Yeah, and that number will ramp up significantly as 2012 kicks in.
So if I want to understand what's next, do I work with my insurance company or do I work with EQC?
Well, you've got to begin, if you've got a claim on your home, you've got to begin with the EQC. And you've got to get established from them whether in fact it's over or under $100,000, and they and the insurer will talk to each other about the way it's dealt with. If it's under $100,000, then EQC in large part will manage your claim, but if it's over, then it's likely to go over to the insurance company who'll appoint a project manager for you.
So once you've heard from EQC that you're over the $100,000, then you're off to deal with your insurance company?
Yes, you are.
So in the worst cases where I need a demolition of my house, who is going to pay for that? Is there a general rule about what happens?
If your house needs to be demolished, the insurance company will pay for it, and the insurance company will arrange for it to be done for you so that the homeowner doesn't have to be concerned about that.
If I'm in the red zone, what zone am I in? There's the stuff about we've got TC1, TC2, TC3. But if I'm in the red zone, what zone am I in when it comes to that rebuild?
Well, in the red zone, you've got the first options alternative.
1 and 2.
So you need to make sure you know whether you want to have an option 1 or an option 2. Option 1's the government. You go to the government and the government compensates you for all that you are due. Option 2, you go to your insurance company, who may well compensate you more than that because of the terms of your contract. So that's the first one in red zone.
Sure, Chris, but if I know I want to try and take that option 2 because my house is a rebuild, for example, then there's the standard by which that rebuild's done to. Is it done to a TC3 standard? How are insurance companies costing that when they do that theoretical calculation, what that rebuild is going to cost?
Well, of course, EQC's responsibility, Roger, is to remediate the land to a condition where it's suitable to be built upon. In other words, a TC1 or TC2 foundation will be appropriate, and so therefore, from Vero costs that project as if the land were in a suitable condition, and that's the basis of settlement with customers.
We are taking the same approach. So what we do with our red zone assessments is we go out, we do a repair methodology and we do a rebuild methodology and look at which is the more economical option of those two. But we treat the land as if it's been remediated by EQC prior to our assessment being done. And
you assume that's been remediated back to a TC1 or a TC2 standard?
Well, the responsibility of EQC is to remediate that land back to its 3 September condition.
Okay. But you've got 3 big companies here presenting their point of view. There may be other companies that may not have that point of view. So, there'll be maybe variations of response, and you need to contact your insurance company and get it clear from them what their view is on the rebuild.
And I guess if your policy isn't clear about what you're due, it may be worth getting some independent advice.
Absolutely.
As well.
In fact, we would encourage that, particularly for people, if they can afford it, they should use some sort of legal advice. But certainly there's citizens' advice, there are disputes mechanisms in place, there are a range of options. And I'll tell you what, people talking to their neighbours and talking to other people about their experiences is in itself a very good way of finding out what your rights are and what some of the technicalities are.
I think the important thing to remember there is that each policy is different. So talking to your neighbours is great as long as you realise that your policy will be different to theirs. But I think we also need to remember the land classifications are for flat green zone land, so the red zone is not classified. It is just for the flat green zone land.
Okay.
And so if I could just confirm too that I think if you talk with your insurance company first, get all the information from them, and then you could go and seek independent advice to verify that information that you've been given.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, John. Wait and see what the offer is from your insurance company, and then seek get your advice from there. I mean, you may want to take guidance before that, and that's absolutely fine, as Chris says as well. But you probably need some numbers and some settlement offers before you investigate your options further.
And I think it's fair to say the insurers are going out of their way to give you accurate information. There's a lot of stories floating around that they may not be. I mean, my experience is the insurers, it is in their interests again to give you as accurate information to interpret your policy, to tell you what your options are to get that claim resolved. And there's not really any incentive for them to mislead you.
Sure. So what advice would you have though for someone in the red zone who doesn't yet know whether you are a rebuild or a repair? And until they know whether they're a rebuild or repair, they're not quite sure how to go forward. What should those people do?
Talk to the insurance company. I think certainly for AMI, and I think for most of the others, those customers in the red zone know whether they're a repair or rebuild at this moment, so they've been able to make the decision. But if you're not certain, talk to your insurance company to get that assessment
and
completed.
Make it clear you're a red zone person and you want answers soon. So if I was a red zone person and I haven't got those answers, typically how long do you think I'll be waiting for my insurance company?
Yeah, part of the answer to that question, Roger, is that there may be a minority where we need to resolve the event allocation issues with EQC.
That is whether it was for February or September or June even.
That's it. So in other words, how much is to be allocated to each event, therefore how many EQC caps apply. And if there are multiple caps, say 3 caps, 3 lots of damage, well, it's possible that the claim may in fact be handled by EQC.
So how fast are you resolving those issues with EQC, Peter?
Answer is as quickly as we can. EQC are working very closely with us, a closely collaborative process, and we are trying to resolve those as quickly as we can. There are a large number of claims though, Roger. This is not just a few a small fire claim in one street. It's significant numbers involved. But if a red zone customer is still waiting for an offer, they ought not to have to wait all that much longer.
We're meeting very regularly with them over these issues, working towards signing protocols to make sure there's a system in place so that once we resolve it on behalf of the industry, we don't go through the issue again. And it's all about getting some speed into the resolution of that, because we're very conscious of this issue.
So it's been suggested that that some property owners are only that some insurers for some properties are only going to restore their property back to its pre-September condition. So these people aren't in the red zone. They're not going to get a foundation. They're not going to get a foundation paid for which does meet these new foundation standards.
Well,
what's the story there?
As long as their foundation was compliant at the time that the house was built, then it's still compliant. So you only need to have your foundation repaired or rebuilt if it has been damaged.
But if it has been damaged and I'm in a TC3 area, in general, most insurance companies are going to pay for it to be rebuilt to that modern standard or fixed to that modern standard?
If they've got a replacement cost policy
that
includes compliance with latest building regulations.
But
most would have.
And if you had like just an indemnity value, which is a named number of 300,000, but if the house needs a new foundation that's going to cost $100,000 to make up a ridiculous number, and they had another $100,000 worth of damage, then you will actually spend that $100,000 on the foundation and the $100,000 on the other repairs, John?
If it's an indemnity policy like that, you'd get the 300,000, the indemnity figure that your house was insured for, and even though it might be going to cost 400,000 to rebuild, including a significant amount for foundation, the new foundation requirements, you'd be responsible for that yourself.
You'll only get, but if the 300,000 paid for a new fancy foundation, to use an expression, that will be okay with AMI.
That's all you'd get, though.
Yeah, that's right. Sure.
You'd only get a foundation in that case. You wouldn't get a house on top because you'd spend all the money on the foundation.
Sure, okay. Who's going to pay for all these geotech reports that need to be done for a lot of these people?
So for the land, if a geotech report is required by EQC to decide next steps forward for the land, whether to remediate or to cash settle, then EQC will usually commission a geotech report. That's a land geotech. Now, if the land is remediated, then that geotech report may be sufficient to enable a repair to be carried out either by EQC or by us. However, the consenting authority may in some cases require a second geotech report, and if the insurer is carrying out the repair...
Consenting authority meaning the City Council?
City Council. So if the insurer is doing the repair, then we will pay for that geotech. So it depends on the circumstances.
But in general, for 99% of people, they're not going to be paying for their own geotech report. It's going to be paid for either by EQC or their insurer, and
that would be a correct statement.
If it's required for the repairs.
Building consents? Who's going to pay for all these building consents?
Total replacement
Insurance industry. Yes.
In almost all cases, it'll be the insurer that pays for your building consent. And it's really important that consents are obtained to people. People cutting corners will have problems down the track if they don't get them consented.
Always, of course, within the sum insured, if you have a sum insured type policy. Important, though, that indemnity policies and sum insured type policies are in the minority. You'd be talking well over 90% of people have open-ended what we call open-ended replacement insurance.
There's been some discussion about people in the TC3 areas who've got undamaged foundations, and in some cases the houses aren't very damaged at all. Are they likely to get insurance into the future as well?
Well, the future of insurance is going to be dependent on a couple of things, but it will be up to individual companies and it will be up to the cost of insurance going forward. And if you look right across the Canterbury region, one of the things that certainly we have been approached to at the Insurance Council is, will it be there? Generally speaking, it will. What will it cost? Generally speaking, a little more. And then we will look at, almost certainly, be much more disciplined in looking at individual properties and saying, what are the conditions around this particular property? But I don't think there's cause for people to be alarmed. And I don't think there's going to be any sort of removal of cover going forward. But different properties may have problems. In the red zone is red for a reason. And it's going to be very difficult to get insurance in there in the future, and that's why the options are there for people.
Also, Chris, we're still wrapping our heads around the implications of the TC3 foundation and what the implications are for properties. I mean, if a property is remediated, land is remediated to its 3 September condition, and the house has been rebuilt, well, you're talking about quite an acceptable insurance proposition. So there's no one answer you can give. At this stage, we're renewing all insurance. We're still committed to Christchurch. And but you know, looking into the future, you can't give any guarantees. It's
so Peter, at the moment, I was in a TC3 area.
Yep.
My foundation was undamaged,
yep,
and I'd suffered minimal damage to my house.
We're offering renewal.
You're offering renewal.
Yep. We're the same, and I think what we need to remember is, although it's TC3, it's still green, so it's the same as any other green zone property for us.
And AMI is the same, and even if your house needed to be repaired, we would still continue to insure it after those repairs were completed. And indeed, if a new house was built in a TC3 zone with compliant current foundation requirements, we would insure it when it's completed.
So are we likely to see, though, in the future different, insurance companies being more personalised, more precise in the way they price insurance? Are we likely to see people in different zones paying different amounts for their insurance?
It's too early to say, would be our answer. I mean, this is one of the most studied earthquakes ever, and we have minute detail now on down to site by site, and what that will mean for the future. It really is too early to say.
There is one certainty, Roger. Insurers are in business to insure people, and there is no incentive for them not to insure people, so they will look at ways to insure people. And as we all know, there will be different options for people. There may be a change in excess, there may well be a change in conditions. They will be certainly more disciplined. And also the state of the land is just one. There's about heights, there's potential for flooding in some areas. And I think now, as Peter says, there's so much better understanding of Canterbury. They're going to understand the risk more, and that's all really in the end the insurers want to know. What's the risk? And what will we be exposed to if we insure that particular property?
If you take the most extreme case, where, let's say, I've now got a stream running under my house, am I likely to still get insurance for that sort of stuff?
It's always been an issue. Specific features specific to a property, such as a stream or whatever, has always been an issue that we've individually underwritten, and that won't change. If a property has unique risk features, then that will be taken into account. I guess the issue is, are there more of those features now? Again, it's sort of a developing story, and our position would be it's really too early to be definitive.
Ours are pretty much along the same lines. There's always been some differences in insurance assessment throughout the country, throughout New Zealand in fact, and even in different areas in Canterbury previously. But I think, as Chris indicated, over time these individual reasons for different sorts of assessments and pricing will come into the market, but it's not going to be very quickly. It's going to take some time before that comes in. The
vast majority of people in Canterbury still retain their insurance. There have been some difficulties, particularly with insurers withdrawing from the market, one in particular. I understand that that insurance company is still insuring people, this is ANZFAR, is insuring people for all risks except earthquake and looking for options on earthquake. Now, we would certainly recognise there's some difficulties around there, but it's a very good gesture, I think, from ANZFAR to retain coverage for all but earthquake and look for the industry to return to normal, hopefully in the new year if we don't get any more seismic shocks.
Not to be forgotten, Chris, that where you've got a fire policy, you've got $100,000 worth of EQC cover.
Automatically.
Yep.
Yes, that's quite right, actually, and that's something that I think we can't remind people of enough. I should have mentioned that.
A lot of people are saying to me, they're hearing from their insurance companies, ring me back in February, they're saying to people. Why is this sort of ring me back in February? You guys all going on holiday throughout January? What's going on
here? Well, I can
here?
tell you on behalf of the industry, and the others might have a different point of view. We can't understand where that one came from, except for one reason possibly, and that is, as I said earlier, there is a quiet optimism that February's when it's going to begin. All right, but certainly there's no stand down for the industry, and there's certainly, from my perspective, we're going to have a good team on deck right through the Christmas and the New Year break.
I think it's actually about the revised DBH guidelines. I would think that if this is a TC3 property owner, their claims handler may have said to them that we're waiting for foundation guidelines. In fact, I would be very disappointed if anyone from our organisation said, ring me back in February, but that may be the message that someone has taken away from there.
Accommodation allowance. So for a lot of people that have been out of their houses since February, February's rolling around, what happens to people's accommodation allowances? Are they going to stop getting their accommodation allowances in February when that expires? What's the story there? How do these people feel supported?
The others, again, we'll talk about their policies. What people need to know about accommodation allowances is they don't take effect until you start claiming on them. So if you can find other accommodation in the meantime and you're not claiming on that allowance, it may not have even been triggered yet. So while people may have up to a year or up to a certain amount of money, if they haven't claimed it yet, it may well still be intact for 12 months. But the people that have been claiming it for 12 months, well, we've got some difficulties arising there.
Yeah, my advice to people would be to look at your insurance policy and see how it's worded, because there are some differences, and get some advice on how your policy operates. But 12 months is fairly typical in the way that Chris has described.
You also obviously have the Canterbury Earthquake Temporary Assistance supplement, isn't it, which people are able to access, and so we would definitely be helping our customers transition between the two if they need to do that.
Another question that came in from someone. I was told by my insurer that a geotech report would not be undertaken until the sign-off from my insurance company.
I think the main area there is that from the insurance company's point of view, the geotech report is all related to the type of foundation that's going to be needed. Now, it's not really practical to do a geotech report, say, today, when you're not intending to build the new house for maybe another 6 or 8 months, because you're just going through the design phase. So we would suggest that the geotech report is done as close as possible to when the rebuilding is actually going to start.
Okay.
We found some problems in the early days where people were not able to get insurance on some houses that had been built or were in part being built. Now, one of the reasons for that is they had been consented prior to the earthquake, and the geotech report had not been done subsequent to the earthquake. So those sort of conditions may well be there as well. I mean, I know you're referring to people already in their homes, but the information needs to be as recent as possible, because we know every quake has changed the land in some way.
We're also trying to procure geotechnical resource internally, and so what we would be suggesting to customers is there is quite a wait on geotech resource at the moment, but if we can procure it internally and with our project management office, we can actually help them get that check done
more quickly.
Yeah, exactly.
And just in addition to what Renee is saying, the industry is attempting to, or is working with EQC in an attempt to get coordination and collaboration on geotech resources, so that we can share the resource and share the reports. So
what does that really mean in reality?
Well, it may be that if EQC, for example, is carrying out invasive testing in a particular suburb, it may be that the testing results from one site could be transferable to another site or to a group of sites. And where that's feasible, we can share that and share the cost and also speed up the process. So there's quite a bit of work doing to address the potential shortage of geotech resources.
I mean, there's been some discussion about EQC people turning up on site with your insurer's representatives. So everybody turns up in one place at one time to try and resolve issues.
That's utopia. It would be absolutely ideal, and interestingly we've had a meeting this morning to try and progress this idea of collaboration and working together. It will become more and more important to resolve these issues such as event allocation and agreeing the amount of damage, geotech and all of those sorts of things. And I think what you'll see is insurance companies and EQC working more closely in a more aligned fashion as next year progresses.
So next year we can expect to see the EQC guy turning up with the Vero guy to try and work out how they're going to resolve issues and try and give householders some certainty without letters going back and forward between players. Is that the sort of thing you're working
where
towards?
that's needed, and in the TC3 areas in particular, we're trying to get towards a position that you're describing. But you know, there's a huge event, and we're working to different timelines. You know, EQC has some timelines we do. We have priorities, they have priorities. So we're trying to get this working together better for next year, and we're confident that there will be some improvement.
Collaboration and cooperation we are working toward all the time. And as Peter says, in an ideal situation we'll get that, but we won't always get it.
So in cases though where it hasn't gone so well, and I'm a householder who feels frustrated about the fact that I think I'm not getting a fair deal from my insurance company, and first of all I just want some independent advice, where do these people go?
Depends whether it's legal, whether it's geotech, or whether it's building, and you go to the specialist concerned. But I think you need to find out from your insurance company and from EQC where your project's heading before you make that decision.
But overall, the advice is go off and get independent advice from a builder or a quantity surveyor or a geotech person, and get your advice, but probably after the insurance company has given you their view, so you're not...
That's one approach. I mean, you may want to pre-arm yourself with some advice, and you know, talk to a variety of people. As Chris said earlier, we strongly advise you to get advice and talk to the appropriate specialists about what lies ahead.
So at the end of all this, Chris, I disagree with a decision of my insurer. What do I do then?
The rules stay the same. Communicate, engage constructively. Get the best advice that you can get independent advice, and then go to your insurer and present your case. If you disagree, then you agree to disagree, and there are options there for you. First of all, the Insurance and Savings Ombudsman, Disputes Resolutions Limited, which is another disputes resolution system. It's free of charge. Use it. And if you are unable to agree there, you can move on to the law. But I think the key thing is engage constructively.
So engage, make your complaint in writing, and then maybe take it off to the Insurance and Savings Ombudsman after that.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for participating in the show. This broadcast is also going to be on our website, which is www.cera.govt.nz. And that website's also got a whole lot of useful information about the recovery, but also about these insurance-related matters as well. Thanks very much for coming along. We'll do more of these in the new year. Thank you.